Who is the most famous Irish poet ever? William Butler Yeats. Which is his most famous poem? The Second Coming. Which is the most controversial animal in 20th century English poetry? The rough beast in The Second Coming. W.B.Yeats is a great poet for reasons which are absolutely clear, and I am fond of repeating the reasons. Substantial quantity, consistent quality, and immense variety. The Second Coming is his most famous poem. Let us try to find out why and how The Second Coming became the most famous poem in the corpus of W.B. Yeats. Yeats was a great personal poet, one of the greatest love poets ever. He spent an entire lifetime dedicating poetry to one beautiful woman. Yeats is the poet of nostalgia, the poet of memory, and the childhood experiences of Yeats are immortalized through his poetry. Yeats wrote with great enthusiasm and great passion about his ancestors, his family, his wife, daughter, son, his houses, his friendships, his personal experiences. There is no doubt that W.B. Yeats was a great personal poet. At the same time, it has to be admitted that W.B. Yeats was a great public poet. He was a great public poet who never shied away from speaking about the public figures of his day. A great public poet who never shied away from commenting on the great public events of his times. A great public poet who never shied away from taking part in politics and converting his experiences in politics into poetry. The Second Coming is arguably the ultimate example, the supreme example, the ne plus ultra of the art of W.B. Yeats as a public poet. Its subject matter is not the fate of a group, not the fate of a society, not the fate of a country, not the fate of a religion, not the fate of a continent, but the fate of an entire civilization, a civilization which foolishly and falsely saw itself as the greatest civilization in the history of the world. The greatest strength of The Second Coming as a poem is its near universalist thematic grasp. This catch-all thematic grasp is supported by a profound and often deliberately enigmatic symbolism, stunning imagery, carefully chosen diction, rough rhythms, and strong biblical and literary allusions. If the Second Coming is an extraordinarily famous and much anthologized poem, it certainly deserves to be so. There is no doubt that the Second Coming is a poem like no other. It is an extraordinary poem, and it took extraordinary circumstances to produce the poem. When I took the national eligibility test long years back, even long decades back, I was asked to write a paragraph on the circumstances under which the Second Coming came to be written. The poem was written in 1919. Let us take a quick look at what was happening in the world around that time. The Easter Rebellion of 1916 in Ireland had ended in defeat, disaster, and death. The Bolshevik Revolution of 1917 resulted in the massacre of the royal family and the overturning of the social order of Tsarist Russia. The First World War came to an end in 1918, and the Great War left behind a world which was all but completely devastated. The influenza pandemic of 1918 affected 500 million people, including W.B.Yeats' pregnant wife George, and killed nearly 50 million people. In 1918, Oswald Spengler published his best-selling history book, The Decline of the West, which discussed the impending collapse, as he saw it, of Western civilization. Wherever he looked, W.B.Yeats saw nothing but turbulence and turmoil. Aristocrats all over Europe, including Ireland, were under tremendous pressure, and W.B.Yeats, though no aristocrat himself, identified himself with the aristocratic classes and felt great empathy for what he saw as their sufferings. It was under these rather strange circumstances that the Second Coming of W.B. Yeats was born.